Good afternoon. This is Quick Take. I'm Madison Mills. Now, 2021 is just wrapping up, but we're already looking ahead to the political battlefield for next year. Stacey Abrams has thrown her name into the hat for one of Georgia's Senate seats, but the battle for that seat isn't just a matter of Democrats versus Republicans this election cycle. Here to fill us in on the state of play is Bloomberg News' Atlanta Bureau Chief Brett Pulley. Brett, welcome to Quick Take, and thank you for being here. Tell me what we know so far about what's going on in Georgia with this election and how Perdue is coming into play here as well.
Well, they are really off to the races here. As you indicated, Stacey Abrams announced last week what was expected, widely expected, that she would indeed seek the Democratic nomination, and that's expected to happen, and she will arrive in the general election. And then as a result of that, former Senator David Perdue, who lost earlier this year to Jon Ossoff in the U.S. Senate race, has now announced that he will face the current governor, Brian Kemp, in a primary race. So that promises to really set up a really tough intra-party battle here in the state of Georgia. President Trump has made it clear that he will likely support Perdue, and in fact issued a statement today in that effect. And of course, ever since the presidential election last year, when Georgia proved so pivotal, the former president has been a big vocal critic of the current governor, Brian Kemp.
But Perdue lost that Senate election already, correct? So what are his chances here, given that Georgia's already had the chance to vote him in and didn't do it?
Well, it's an interesting point, but what Perdue and his allies are saying, and others around the party who are indicating their support for this, is that they've taken a look and come to the conclusion that the current governor, Brian Kemp, will not do well against Stacey Abrams in a general election. And they believe that David Perdue will fare better. And, look, it's quite clear from David Perdue's statement today that he's basing this campaign on the big Trump story, that the election was taken away from him, and that somehow something different should have happened in Georgia. So that's kind of the fight that they're preparing to fight. It promises to be, pretty nasty, not only in that primary, but also, as you've indicated, we're talking about Stacey Abrams, whose profile and recognition nationally as a result of her voting initiatives has really exploded in recent months. Extremely popular candidate and really a hot issue when we talk about running on the basis of, again, the last election not being fair. So it promises to be really nasty. And, one of the things that's interesting about it is that Brian Kemp and David Perdue have really been close allies. They come from kind of the same wing of the state party. And in fact, they were together as recently as this summer at the state convention. And so things are splitting up fast in the state of Georgia.
Sure. It seems like just another indication of kind of the pre and post Trump Republican Party and divisions within that. I do want to listen quickly to former U.S. Senator David Perdue's announcement. Let's listen into that, and then we'll get your reaction.
Sure.
I'm David Perdue. I'm running for governor to make sure Stacey Abrams is never governor of Georgia. Make no mistake, Abrams will smile, lie, and cheat to transform Georgia into her radical vision of a state that would look more like California or New York. To fight back, we simply have to be united. Unfortunately, today, we're divided, and Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger are to blame.
I mean, Brett, he makes that nastiness you mentioned really clear in that announcement, really going after Stacey Abrams. Given what you said, that Georgia, voted for Biden in the last presidential election, I mean, how likely is it that they don't go with Abrams in the gubernatorial election as well?
Yeah, well, look, I think this thing is going to depend on if indeed Perdue is successful in the primary, and Kemp is not going to be a pushover. But if he's successful, it's going to depend on whether or not they can convince voters that indeed somehow things have been handled unfairly in the past. You know, to that, and in fact, one of the things in that clip that you just played was David Perdue also criticizing the current Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, right, who we know infamously received a phone call from the president about the election outcome and has been another target of the former president's. And there is a Trump-backed candidate also seeking that office, the Secretary of State, running against Raffensperger. So there are few around the state Trump-backed candidates who are lining up to defeat others from the Republican Party in the primary.
Brett, the last time we talked, we were chatting about the election laws in Georgia. To what extent could those come into play with any sort of result we might get from this upcoming election?
Well, I don't know that anything is going to change, you know, from the legislature's vote last fall, I think it was. And what we'll have to see is how those things play out, right? You know, like, for example, you may recall that one of the issues was that you can't hand water out.
Right.
Then I've heard different interpretations. Well, you can't hand water out. That's, you know, in the course of campaigning water that's branded or things like that. So I don't know exactly how it plays. So things like that, I guess we'll be watching closely to see what kind of impact it has. And of course, in terms of those who are in the business of getting the vote out, I'm sure that they'll be focused on what the rule changes are as well.
Mm-hmm. And just in terms of what voters might be thinking about, I know that inflation is a huge issue where you are in Atlanta with a 7.9% price hike in the area. How could that impact what voters are thinking about as they go to the ballot box?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have some of the highest prices, you're right, in the country. I mean, we're trending higher than just about anyone else. So, you know, you have to think that it's a factor. Look, it's kind of rare when economic issues are not factors.
Sure.
And then there are some other big issues here, particularly in the Atlanta area as it relates to crime and those kinds of things. But I would say that the economy will be paramount, and as we know, the current president's approval ratings are not so great right now, largely as a result of that.
Right, and of course that could also play into the election results. Final question for you, Brett. What are you going to be monitoring looking ahead, just in terms of any predictions we may get about this election outcome and how well Stacey Abrams could or could not do?
Well, you know, this is the thing. I mean, look, this is kind of going to be a test of certainly how influential the former president, Trump, is, and it's going to be a big test of just how much power Stacey Abrams does have when it comes to statewide contests. Because let us not forget, Senator Raphael Warnock, who also won in a runoff earlier this year, has to face re-election next year because his seat was just a 2-year seat because he was replacing someone who retired early. So that race is going to be against a Trump-backed candidate, the former University of Georgia and NFL football star Herschel Walker. So it's there are I think there are a number of factors to watch here, and it makes it quite clear that Georgia once again is going to be pivotal in this midterm election.
Certainly a state to watch, especially as we look to what the future of American politics as a whole is going to be looking like. Bloomberg News Atlanta Bureau Chief Brett Pulley, really appreciate you joining us as always. Thank you so much. We're going to continue our coverage right here on Quick Take throughout the day, so please stick with us for more. But for now, I'm Madison Mills in New York.